Will Seventh-day Adventists and other Christians accept digital ID? Recently, there's been a lot of talk about the introduction of digital ID, and I think most of I don't watch TV. Okay, I don't have a TV in my house. I do have a TV. I only use it to watch sermons on it on Sabbath. But I do keep myself abreast of what's going on around the world. I think that's something that should be done by every Christian. We should not just be reading our Bibles only. We should be basically knowledgeable about spiritual things as well as the things of the world. We need to understand how the world works. So I do keep myself I try to keep myself aware of what's going on around the world by watching YouTube videos. I use Telegram. I get a lot of news on Telegram. Sometimes I get things on WhatsApp, and I also share things on WhatsApp, and I use BitChute and Rumble. Yes, there are many platforms and many resources out there. I read books as well. I read the Bible, and I read books every day in my devotion. I start off by reading the Bible for a few minutes, for about 30 minutes, and I read mostly history books or books that help me to understand spiritual things as well as to understand the things of the world and to understand history. So why I'm saying all this is because I think this past week, today being Saturday, the 4th of October, this past week and I think the week before, there's been a lot of talk of the introduction of digital IDs in the UK, and Keir Starmer has actually come out and basically doubled down on the issue of digital IDs and he has said that every adult in the UK will need a digital ID in order to work. But I suppose it's not just about work. It's about, because the thing is, if you refuse to get a digital ID, if you can't work, that means you can't get paid. And where there's a country where I think it's Vietnam, where thousands of bank accounts have been shut down, and these bank accounts belong to people who have refused to receive a digital ID. So it's happening in different parts of the world. Here in Zimbabwe, I've not heard anything about that. I know that eventually this is going to come down to Zimbabwe and other African countries and other third world countries. But at the moment, they seem to be targeting mostly first world countries, with the UK being the one that's really pushing for the introduction of mandated digital IDs. They've actually said it's mandatory, by the way. It's similar to what they did during this pandemic. They said that certain things were mandatory, like getting the poke in order for you to work. No, what do they call it? No, I think they said no jab, no job. I think that's an expression that was used in Australia quite a lot. So the UK has been mentioned. Vietnam. Initially, I heard that there are some bank accounts that were shut down. Thousands, I can't remember the exact number of bank accounts were shut down. But then recently, I found out that those bank accounts were shut down because the people that owned those bank accounts had refused to accept the digital ID, which is obviously very unfair. I mean, no one should be forced to do anything against their conscience or against their will. And I've said previously in some of my other videos that is actually slavery. That's my definition, and there are others who have defined anything that you're forced to do against your will as slavery. So UK, Vietnam, and then Mark Carney, who's the Prime Minister of Canada, who wasn't elected properly because there was a lot of vote rigging that took place in the last elections, where basically he was selected. Okay, he was questioned about digital IDs and didn't really give a straight answer, as most politicians do. But then soon after that, they started talking about the introduction of digital IDs in Canada as well. So Canada has been mentioned, and in the US as well. The US has been mentioned as well. And in the UK, they're saying that digital IDs will help to stop illegal immigration because there are a lot of illegal migrants that go to the UK and then they're allowed to work. So they're saying that if anyone doesn't have a digital ID, they can't work. So in other words, what they're trying to say is illegal immigrants will not have access. They will not, in some way, they will not obtain a digital ID, therefore they can't work, and that they're saying that this will stop all the boats, that are going to the UK with illegal migrants. But that's such a nonsense argument, because if they really wanted to stop the boats, they could do that very easily. And someone also made the argument that British citizens have birth certificates, they've got passports and driving licenses and NI numbers. All that can be used to verify whether someone is a British citizen or an illegal migrant. After all, it's the UK governments, whether it's the Conservatives or the Labour Party, have allowed the issue of migration to get out of control for the very purpose of doing what they're doing now. It's a problem reaction solution. They actually created a problem of mass illegal migration. The British public then reacted to this problem, and as you've seen, there have been many protests. There was even one protest which happened a few weekends ago, where it's estimated that there were over 1 million protesters. Or of course, in the controlled Jesuit controlled mass media, they said that there were only 100,000 people at the protest, which is not true. The numbers were far much larger than that. So I was just saying the British government, whether it doesn't really matter which party it is, because they are both Jesuit controlled, they allowed this issue of illegal immigration to happen. It's been happening for a long time now, for decades basically, but it seems to have gotten worse in the past few years, where even illegal migrants were being housed in hotels and being given 4-star and 5-star treatment, eating the best food. I mean, even having buffets where they can choose what they want to eat, whilst British citizens were struggling to survive. So yeah, I don't know if I've missed out any country where digital IDs are being spoken about in terms of being introduced, but I know that the UK was foremost in the news, but Vietnam, Canada, and the US were also mentioned. I think some other, in fact, no, the whole of the EU recently, I think it was yesterday or the day before, I saw something about the EU saying that they were going to introduce digital IDs. So it's very clear that it's a coordinated agenda, where this is one of the things that shows or proves that the political leaders are not really the ones in control, because they, it's similar to COVID, where the whole world did the same thing. Surely there's got to be someone above the governments who's deciding when things are done and how things are done. So that's what's happening. So my question that I'm trying to answer in this video, the question is, will Seventh-day Adventists and other Christians accept digital ID? And unfortunately, the answer is yes. Most of them will. And how do I know that? Well, you can tell how someone is going to behave in the future based on how they've behaved in the past. If you look at what happened during this pandemic, most Seventh-day Adventists and other Christians and people in general accepted the mandates. They wore their masks, which some called face diapers, and they participated in anti-social distancing and this constant washing of hands, which is for me, it's a form of superstition. So it's not scientific at all. What's referred to as science these days is actually a religion. It's a false religion. It's actually called scientism. Maybe you can go and look that up in your own time, but that's not what I'm addressing. And then most Christians and non-Christians took the poke because they were scared of getting sick, they were scared of dying, they were scared of losing their jobs, because in certain jobs it was mandated that you needed to take the poke in order to continue working. And if the way most minds work is that people know that if I can't work and I can't get paid, that means I can't pay my mortgage, I can't pay my home insurance, I can't pay my car insurance, I can't buy fuel for my car, and I can't do shopping, which is one of the most important things, buying groceries. I can't pay for my Wi-Fi and all this. I can't pay for my TV license or my my cable network. I think that's what they call it in the UK, in the US. You can't pay for all these things if you can't work. So because of that fear and that worry, a lot of Christians actually went against their own conscience and went against what the Bible says and participated in the scamdemic. Which, if you go to Revelation 23 verse 18, let me just check. No, I think it's actually Revelation 18. Revelation 18 verse 23. The one where it talks about sorcery. It uses the word sorcery, but actually the root word for the word sorcery is actually pharmakia. And I've addressed this before, but in case you're watching this for the first time, let me just have a quick look at it. It's Revelation 18, 23. And it's the second part of that verse. It says, "For thy merchants were the great men of the earth, for by thy sorceries were all nations deceived." So the word sorceries is actually pharmakia, from where we get the word pharmacy from. Or in some countries they'll say chemist. I'm going to the chemist to buy some drugs, but actually what they're referring to is a pharmacy. And it says that the whole world is deceived by the pharmaceutical industry. That's what that verse is talking about. So for any Christians who now, see, there are some Christians who are making excuses, and I've got family members who are now making excuses for why they took the poke. They'll say that they were scared, but God had already warned us not to take part in all that. So I believe, based on how certain Christians behaved last time, the majority of Christians actually were scared and took the poke, as well as all the other things that took part in the scamdemic, in the same way that the world took part in the scamdemic. I believe that most Christians, including Seventh-day Adventists, will accept the digital ID. Now, someone might be asking, what's wrong with taking the digital ID? Well, it's and I'm not saying it's the mark of the beast, but there are many even in the comment section of YouTube who are saying that it's the mark of the beast. And I'm not saying, and I'm also not making excuses for taking it. I believe we shouldn't be taking the digital ID because it's even if it's not the mark of the beast, it's a stepping stone to the mark of the beast. Okay, and there are actually three things that will result in the permanent control of human beings on this earth. Once you take digital ID and all the other stuff that I'm going to talk about, there will be no going back. Don't think that this is temporary, just like with the scamdemic, because the scamdemic is over now, isn't it? Even though in the background there's still some of the stuff from the COVID era that's still happening with for example with the vaccines that's still going on. So. There are three things which I call the trinity of total control of mankind. These three things are going to be the digital ID, CBDC, which is digital money, and then there's going to be carbon credits. It's been said by some that, and I believe this to be true, that those three things, once you accept those three things, there will be no going back. You're going to be a slave. And because slavery comes in different forms, okay? General public tend to think that slavery is when you work for nothing. When someone, keeps you locked up or chained up and they make you work for nothing. That's not the only definition of slavery. Slavery is when basically all your freedoms and your rights are taken away. And my definition even goes beyond that. It's anything that you're forced to do against your will, anything that you're made to do when you don't want to do it. Against your will or against your conscience, that is slavery, okay? So for instance, if someone tries to tell you if you're a grown man or a grown woman, you're in your own home, whether you're married or not, if you're an adult and you're in your own home and someone tries to pressure you to do something against your will in your own home, and you actually capitulate and you obey, knowing that you are doing those things against your own conscience, and you are not happy to do them, you are a slave. Okay, like those so-called men and women who are told by their parents to leave their spouses and they actually obey. You are a slave, as far as I'm concerned. And there's actually a word called no. You can actually say no. If you don't want to do something, you can say no. And sometimes, yes, it can be difficult to say no at the time, but all you need to do is, someone tries to force you to do something, you don't have to actually answer and give them a reason for why you don't want to do something. For instance, in America, there's what's called the Fifth Amendment. When you're stopped by the police, you don't have to speak to the police. You can just maintain your silence, but you don't have to do anything against your will. Okay, so let me just read for you Jeremiah 12 verse 5 here. And I think most of you know it. Maybe you don't exactly know where it's from, but when I read it, I'm sure you'll know. You know this verse. So Jeremiah 12 verse 5 says, "If thou hast run with the footmen, and they have wearied thee, then how canst thou contend with horses?" Yeah. If you've run with the footman is someone who runs on foot. Okay. If you run with the footmen and they basically run faster than you can't run as fast as the footmen. How are you going to run against horses? Okay, that's pretty much what he's saying. This is KJV language, KJV English, and then it goes on to say, "And if in the land of peace, wherein thou trustest, they weary thee, then how wilt thou do in the swelling of Jordan?" So the part I like the most is that first part. If you have run with the footmen and they have wearied thee, how can you contend with horses? So in other words, if you are failing, if a small test comes like this pandemic, that was a test on the whole world, and for me it was very interesting because it's okay. Let me talk about my like extended family and relatives and talk about how they reacted. I know this because a lot of them actually verbalized what decisions they made, especially when it came to the poke. Okay, most of them took the poke. What I know is that one of my brothers that is the youngest in the family, because we're five brothers, with me being the oldest, the youngest in my family. I know he didn't take the poke because he told me, and I didn't take the poke either. But most of my family members, including my parents, who I've cut ties with, but I heard that they took the poke, and I've got uncles and aunts who took the poke as well. Uh, so what I was saying is, this pandemic was a small test, and all these so-called Christians, and most of them are Seventh-day Adventists, they basically failed the test because it was a test upon the whole world. And there are reasons why this pandemic happened. I'm not going into too much detail as to why that happened. I mean, if you watch my other videos, you understand why those things happen, because I explained them in those videos. So if a small test comes and you fail, how can you expect to pass when a bigger test comes? So the big test that's coming now, or bigger test compared to this pandemic, is the whole digital ID, CBDC, and credit core system that's been brought in to enslave the whole world. Remember, I said in one of my videos that one of Satan's aims is to enslave every man, woman, and child here on this earth. He's going to put us in a position where we either worship him, because Satan is mostly worshipped indirectly. It's by so let's say for illustration purposes, worshipping an idol. It's actually Satan you're worshipping. That's how he's mostly worshipped. And of course, there's a church of Satan, which has got a small number of members. Then there's a big church of Satan, which I said before. I don't like sometimes saying exactly who it is, but I have explained it in one of my videos before. It's Babylon the Great. That's the church. That's the big church of Satan. So that's how Satan is worshipped most of the time. So he's going to put the whole world in a position where you either worship him directly or indirectly, or you are cut off from the systems of the world. That's what Satan is doing right now. Remember, Satan works through human beings. He's got people that actually follow him and obey him and worship him, in the same way that God has people that follow him, obey him, believe in him, and worship him. Okay, so and a lot of these people are religious people, especially those in the Roman Catholic Church, were very high up in the Catholic Church, the billionaires and the celebrities and the leaders of these corporations, because the corporations are also going to be used to bring about the mark of the beast and the enforced Sunday worship, which is where we're going now. So Jeremiah 12 verse 5 is just saying, if you have failed on a small test, how can you expect to pass when a bigger test comes? In other words, don't compromise. Don't compromise. This is the issue that many Christians have with a lot of the things that are going on in the world. There's a lot of compromise. Don't compromise. There's a certain saying in English which I'm not going to say because there's rude language, but it's, you know what they say about compromise. Yeah, don't compromise. Or you know what happens when you compromise. Okay. Uh, So the next text I would like to share is Luke 16:10, and it says, "He that is faithful in that which is least is faithful also in much, and he that is unjust in the least is unjust also in much." That very first part of that verse, "He that is faithful in that which is least is faithful also in much." So if you were faithful during this pandemic and you refuse to take part, not just by taking the poke, but in all the other things, then yeah, you'll most likely be faithful in a bigger test. Okay. Uh, Revelation Revelation 18:11 says, "And the merchants of the earth shall weep and mourn over her," mourning over Babylon the Great. Okay, the Catholic Church. "For no man buyeth their merchandise anymore. The merchandise of gold and silver and precious stones and of pearls and fine linen and purple and silk and scarlet and all thine wood, and all manner of vessels of ivory, and all manner of vessels, most precious wood, and of brass, and iron, and marble, and cinnamon, and odors, and ointments, and frankincense, and wine, and oil, and fine flour, and wheat, and beasts, and sheep, and horses, and chariots, and slaves, and souls of men." So Revelation 18:11 and up to verse 13 is talking about how the merchants of the earth, yes, when Babylon the Great is destroyed, they're going to mourn over her, because no man buyeth her merchandise anymore. But the things that they're involved in trading, buying and selling, is those things that I've read out here, and even the slaves and the souls of men. So mankind is going to be enslaved again, but not in the same way that they were enslaved before. Like in the transatlantic slave trade, it's not going to be like that. It's going to be digital this time. Okay. Um, there's a very good expression which I came across in the comment section of YouTube. Someone referred to what's coming up on the world as a digital dark age, and I think that's a very good expression to use to explain what is coming up on the earth. It's a digital dark age, is where a technology is going to be used to enslave mankind. It doesn't matter whether you're a woman or a man or a child, you're going to be enslaved if you accept these things that are coming upon the earth. And in terms of the dark ages, for I'm hoping that those who are watching this video, you know who was in charge during the dark ages. It was the Catholic Church. So the second dark age that's coming up on the world, it's also going to be the Catholic Church. But they hide behind layers. They use front organizations to hide behind, so that most people don't know or won't know that it's them who are running the show. Another text is Revelation 21 verse 8, which talks about fear. So this text actually mentions a number of groups of people, but the first group that's mentioned is probably, for me, in this video, is the most important. Okay, so this is Revelation 21 verse 8. It says, "But the fearful and unbelieving and the abominable and murderers and whoremongers and sorcerers and idolaters and all liars shall have their part in the lake which burneth with fire and brimstone," which is the second death. So the very first group that's mentioned, which is going to burn in the lake of fire, is the fearful. Another word I like to use for the fearful is the cowardly. So a lot of and we have to be careful about the media, because the media likes to tug at our emotions. For instance, during this pandemic, they said if you don't take the poke, you're going to call grandma and all this stuff, grandma and grandpa, and all this stuff. So the same tactics are going to be used to pressure people to take to accept the digital ID and CBDCs and all this stuff. So, but the fearful, a word I like to use for the fearful is a cowardly. So don't be a coward, okay? Even if you last time you failed the test, this time try and be faithful to God by being obedient to Him and not taking part in the things of the world. Okay, there should be a difference between a Christian and a non-Christian. If you are taking part in the things that the non-Christians are taking part in, what makes you different? Next one, Isaiah 35 verse 4. Say to them that are of a fearful heart, be strong, fear not. Behold, your God will come with vengeance, even God with recompense. He will come and save you. Yeah, fear not. The Holy Scriptures actually mention, some will say, 365 times the Bible says, do not be afraid. Well, I think it depends which version you're using, but it does say many, many times, do not be afraid, fear not. Now here it's saying, say to them of a fearful heart, be strong, fear not. Okay, don't allow the media to put you in fear so that you then comply with things a Christian should not be complying with, or a Christian should not be doing, or things that God has told us not to do. Okay, there's a phrase that just came to my mind as I was talking there. Yeah, do not comply with your own slavery. Do not comply with your own slavery. It doesn't matter what anyone says or does. Let's get away from this, like mob psychology or behaving like sheep, that we do the very same thing that everyone else is doing. That is not a characteristic of a faithful Christian. A faithful Christian does not follow the things of the world. You can tell who the worldly Christians are, because they take part in all the things of the world, whether it be this pandemic, or they're believing in climate change, and just swallowing everything hook, line, and sinker. That's not how a true Christian behaves. Luke 12 verse 32. Fear not, little flock, for it is your Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. 2 Timothy 1 verse 7. For God hath not given us the spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a soul or sound mind. Okay, God has not given us a spirit of fear. Jeremiah 29 verse 11. For I know the thoughts that I think toward you, saith the Lord, thoughts of peace and not evil, to give you an expected end. When it says that God wants to give us an expected end, He actually wants us to know how things are going to end for us here on this earth. In other words, through prophecy and everything that's been written in the Holy Scriptures, where God predicts what's going to happen in the future. He wants us to know what's coming in the future so that we can prepare ourselves. But He wants us to do, even in those times in those times of trial that are coming upon the earth, times of tribulation, He still wants us to do well. Okay, He wants the best for us. That's what this verse is saying. So in terms of the expected ends, maybe just explaining that a bit further, is the mark of the beast. That we've known about that for a long time. It's been spoken about for a long time, and but the picture of how things are going to be rolled out is becoming more clear now that we get close to the mark of the beast and national and international Sunday laws, which are going to be, they say that it's going to be connected to climate change. It's in the same way that carbon credits are going to be are connected to climate change. They'll say that bad behavior is going to be punished. It's going to be a points-based system where, let's say, if you travel quite a lot, the points will be deducted from your your credit scores, and it would limit you in terms of being able to travel. In fact, there's a video on YouTube of this Chinese man who he was stripped of his right to travel. He couldn't travel basically because this kind of system has already been introduced in China. In fact, there's this Catholic bishop. I think his name is Bishop Sorondo. He said that China is a good implementer of Catholic social justice or something. So basically, I can't remember the exact quote, but in other words, if you want to know how this system that's coming upon the earth, which obviously is going to have the mark of the beast, uh, in it as well being enforced upon the world. If you want to know how exactly it's going to be done, you look at China and what's happening in China. Basically, digital ID, carbon credits, and CBDCs are going to result in the absolute control of mankind. You will not be able to do anything without the authorities knowing what you're doing, and they'll actually control all your movement and even your buying and selling. So I was just explaining about carbon credits that basically good behavior will be rewarded and bad behavior will be punished. So if you travel a lot, this the whole points-based system, which they're actually using already in China, it's like your points will be deducted from your credit scores, and you won't be able to travel. So if you eat a lot of red meat, you only be allowed to eat a certain amount of red meat. Bear in mind that they're tying all this in with climate change, which is false science. For those who may be saying, well, what's causing all the extreme weather events around the world? Well, the extreme weather events, some of them, and not all extreme weather events are natural. Okay, they are not happening organically. Some of these are being caused by what's called geoengineering, or a manipulation of the weather, which actually, for those maybe who are hearing this for the first time, weather manipulation has been going on since the early 1900s. Okay, and especially the U.S. government has got a lot of technology in which they can. I don't like to use the word control. They can manipulate the weather. So that's what's causing a lot of the extreme weather events, which are then said to be caused by climate change. Climate change is a nonsense. There's no such thing. Okay, and for those who are Christians, maybe go in and read your Bibles and maybe tell me where climate change is mentioned. There's no climate change mentioned, especially since they say that climate change is the basically it can actually destroy the whole world. If it's so important or so devastating, how come God never even mentioned it once in the Holy Scriptures? So yeah, that's the danger of believing things that are not even written down in Scripture. If you're a Christian, you need to. If you believe anything, you need to back it up with God's word. So the just once again, the carbon credits, digital ID, and digital currencies, the CBDCs, are going to result in the total enslavement of mankind. You won't be able to do anything without those things. So it's similar to what happened during this pandemic, where if you traveled a certain amount of distance from your home, let's say to do shopping. This actually happened to me and my wife, and my daughter, one of my daughters. We traveled to across. We came to a roadblock that was manned by police officers, and they said, "Where have you come from? Who are you?" and all this stuff. And then when we told them where we were coming from, they said, "But you've traveled more than 5 k's to get here. You know, the rules say that you're not allowed to travel more than 5 k's." So I was just tying this into climate change, where they'll say that the more you travel, the more your car pollutes the air, which then contributes to climate change, which is nonsense. So eventually, those police officers, anyway, for those who are wondering what happened there, they let us through eventually, but they were saying you're not allowed to travel more than 5 k's from your house to do shopping and all this stuff because you might spread the virus. And then there were actually times during this pandemic where they were saying that if you wanted to, let's say with me, I live in a place called Julius del Nyanga. If I wanted to travel to Harare, they were saying that you need a letter. So similar things are coming, where you can't do anything without getting permission. And if you behave badly, points will be taken off your credit score, and then that will affect you buying, shopping. For those who like, for those who eat meat, if you eat a lot of meat within the first 2 weeks of the month, you can eat into your points that allow you to buy meat the rest of the month. And if you violate any traffic laws, basically the money will be, if you're supposed to be given a fine, the fine will be taken out of your bank account straight away, basically, because your car will be tied in to the system, and they'll know who you are and everything, and stuff like that. Even littering, there are AI videos even being made of people who are trying to warn us of the danger of taking part in what's coming, showing that even littering straight away, when you litter, don't know who you are, because we even have facial recognition is coming in and all this stuff. So yeah, so that's what's coming. But are most Christians going to take part in this system? Yes, they will, because most Christians are fearful, like what that verse says, Revelation 21 verse 8, the fearful, and it says that the fearful will have their part in the lake of fire with so but it's not all doom and gloom. There is hope. The Holy Scriptures do say that we shouldn't be afraid. We need to rely more on Christ than on the systems that are being built here. Maybe I should just end by sharing one more verse here. Revelation 2:20. And there's a tendency by most Christians. Oh yeah, this is, yeah. In fact, it's a good thing I brought this up. There's a tendency by Christians to go along with whatever their church says. But if you look at what happened during this pandemic, I know, for instance, that the SDA church said that their members could, they actually refused to give their church members exemption letters for those who didn't want to take the poke. And there's some, I heard some stories of Seventh-day Adventists who went and asked their pastors and their elders whether it was okay to take the poke. Why are you asking your pastor or your elder whether it's okay to do that? Why did you do that? Because you're supposed to ask God and go to His Word and ask Him, even though the warning was already given that we're not supposed to take part. Remember, I think it's in First John of Second John, it says that God hates those who love the world. Love not the world, neither the things that are in the world. If any man loves the world, the love of the Father is not in him. Okay, so let me just say this once again. In the tests that are coming up ahead of us, whether the mark of the beast or CBDCs, Sunday, carbon credits, digital ID, do not go and ask your pastor or your elder or some person in authority whether it's right or not right to take part in whatever is coming. That person is not your God. Okay, go and ask God what you should do, because those same people are already compromising anyway, and most pastors and whoever those in positions of authority in certain churches, they normally do whatever the organization tells them to do. So if you go and ask them for advice, they'll just tell you to do what they are doing, and most of the time it's compromise. They're compromising. So don't take advice from a person who compromises. Personally, don't take advice from someone who took part in this pandemic, especially those who took the poke. Don't take advice from anyone who's compromising their faith. So I just wanted to end by reading Revelation 2 verse 20, which says, in fact, Revelation 2:10, okay, fear none of those things which thou shalt suffer. Behold, the devil shall cast some of you into prison, that ye may be tried, and you shall have tribulation 10 days. So the first part of this verse is talking about something that already happened in history, where an emperor called Diocletian persecuted Christians for 10 days. Bear in mind that 10 days in prophecy is 10 years, okay? So it's actually 10 years. The very end part says, be thou faithful unto death, and I'll give thee a crown of life. Okay, let me read that again. Be thou faithful unto death, and I will give thee a crown of life. So do not allow anyone to take your crown from you. Stay faithful, and even if you lose your life, remember that God will always resurrect you and you spend the rest of eternity with Him. So I'm hoping that what I've said actually makes sense. I know that I've been speaking for a long time, but I hope that it makes sense. So prepare to meet that God, and I'll see you in the next video.